So in this video, we're going to look at how to increase the value of your business. But to start off with, you probably need to know how much your current business is worth on the open market. Now, obviously, every business is going to be different in value, depending on what industry you're in, whether you have a full management team, whether the business is reliant on the owners, what size of business the business is. But there are various guide prices available where various firms have researched and analysed every deal that's happened over the last 12 months, and they publish these reports every year. One of these publishers is called Biz Buy Sell, and they analyse thousands of deals across all industries at the small business end of the market. So if you want a copy of that report, let me know and I'll be happy to send it over. But I do need to warn you that it might shock you a bit, and I don't mean that in a good way. Most people believe that their business is worth much more than it actually is. And I don't know whether that's been influenced by the media or films or huge firms like Facebook buying businesses for billions of dollars. But the facts are a small local business just isn't worth that much money. And I'll tell you why that is. What makes companies like Facebook so valuable is, first of all, they're big, which means they're less risky for an investor. If a member of staff leaves, it probably won't affect the business. Whereas if a key member of staff leaves a small business, it can literally mean disaster for that business. I know one business which had around 5 million in revenue, and one of their management team left. He took a lot of the clients with him, along with 2 other members of staff, and then the business ended up dropping to about 1.5 million in revenue within a few months. So scale is one driver that affects value. The next driver is liquidity. How easy is it for me to sell my shares in a small business? So let's say I invest in Jimmy's business, I own 15% of that business. How easy is it going to be for me to sell those shares and get a return on my money? I'll tell you, it's almost impossible. There just isn't the marketplace for people to buy and sell shares like there is for say, a large public company. And that means the majority of investors avoid it. And that means the values remain low because there's no money flowing around, because there's just no demand there from investors. If you think about the opposite to that, a large publicly traded company like Google or Facebook or Apple, I can go and spend £100 on shares this morning, and then if I change my mind at lunchtime, I can sell them again in the afternoon. This liquidity issue is why small businesses aren't worth as much as bigger businesses. But now that you understand these basics, let's talk about the levers that you can use to increase the value of your own business. Okay, so we use a basic formula to represent how a business is valued. V equals P times M. Value is equal to profit multiplied by a factor. So in most businesses, what you need to measure is what's called EBIT or EBITDA. And this is just an accounting term that means profit. And then you have what's called a multiple. So this basically means it's a factor that you multiply the profit by to reach the end value of the business. So you have 2 levers that you can change, which will drastically change the value of the business. So the first one, profit. It's not too difficult to think about this, but to improve the value of the business, you have to increase the profit. That's pretty obvious. So what's a few things you can do to increase profit? You can reduce your costs, whether that's cost of delivering your service or reduce your overheads. Or you can grow the business so that you just increase that number relative to how much you increase revenue. Then there's a multiple, and the multiple is dictated by what we've already talked about: scale and liquidity. Let's look at them in more detail. So scale first. The larger you grow a business in terms of revenue, the business moves up into various brackets. So to talk in general, and to give you an example of what those brackets generally are, for a business with less than 1 million in revenue, the multiple will normally be around 1 times profit. A business with revenue between 1 million and 2 million will be a 2 times multiple. 2 to 5 million revenue will be a 3 times multiple. 5 to 10 million will be a 4 times multiple. 10 to 25 million will be a 5 times multiple. So you can see that by getting into the next bracket up, if your profit is, say, 200,000, well, you can increase the value by a multiple of 200,000 without doing anything else to the business. So how could you jump into these other brackets? Well, one obvious strategy is to buy or merge with another business. In that case, you might jump 2 or even 3 brackets in a single deal. Otherwise, you just need to increase revenue. Maybe you take on larger contracts, even if the profit margins are slightly lower than what you're used to, you're still moving into that next multiple bracket. There's obviously one side effect of doing this. If you're reducing profit margins to win bigger contracts, you're going to need finance to cash flow to finance the cash flow demand on those contracts. So that's one thing worth considering. How will you cash flow those bigger contracts? So how about liquidity? Well, this one is a bit harder to change, but there's a few options. And we do have a method for doing this, but it's only open to companies that are debt-free and have more than $500,000 in profits. So if your business fits that criteria, then obviously get in touch and I can tell you more about that. But let me show you the difference between the multiple of a publicly traded company and the multiple of the same company before it was publicly traded. So you can see the exact same company jumps from a 4 times multiple to a 7 times multiple. It almost doubles in value. And the only reason for that is because investors can buy and sell those shares easily. And the larger the business grows, the higher this public multiple also grows. In fact, if you look at companies like Microsoft and Google, you'll see their multiple is something like 50 times profit. Now, what does all this mean if you're a small business? Well, if you're watching this video, you're probably thinking about either selling your business at some time in the future, or you're thinking about raising investment to grow it. That's fine. But let's say you're thinking of selling it. Well, now that you know these levers that you can use to massively increase what you'll get for the company when you do sell it, now that you know these levers, wouldn't it make more sense to stay in the business, maybe even raise some investment, and for the next 2 or 3 years, just work intensely on growing these 2 levers? If you take on investment, inside 2 or 3 years, you could triple the size of that business, and that could mean jumping from the 2nd bracket into the 5th bracket. And actually, the smaller a business is, the harder it is to actually sell it, for the same reasons I've already talked about. Most of the time, what people are actually buying is just a job, because there's normally not a management team in place. So a buyer will give someone a pot of money to create a full-time job for themselves. They're buying themselves a job. And this is also one of the reasons that over 98% of small businesses that are listed for sale never actually sell. So to spend a couple of years growing it, not only will you earn more money in the process, you'll increase the value of your business, but you'll also have some time to properly get your plans sorted out, so you know what you'll be doing after you've sold the business. So that's it for this video. I hope you got some value from it and you can use it to increase the value of your own business when it comes time to sell.